Usually when you look at a multi-million-dollar business contract, there's this overriding expectation of like cold, hard precision.
Right. Very clinical.
Exactly. You picture a spreadsheet. You plug in the revenue projections, you assess the market value, and an accountant just points at the black ink and declares the deal logical.
Yeah, which is how traditional corporate structures prefer to operate.
Mhm.
I mean, in business, ambiguity is the enemy.
Oh, absolutely.
You want your assets quantified, you want depreciations mapped out, and, well, everything neatly categorized in a ledger.
Mhm.
The human element is usually mitigated as much as possible, to protect the bottom line.
But then you step into the world of professional sports, and specifically into the hyper-scrutinized, just intensely pressurized ecosystem of a historic football club.
Right.
And suddenly that spreadsheet is rendered completely useless. Like, we are looking at a transactional landscape that is deeply emotional, incredibly murky, and driven by narratives that change, honestly, by the hour.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of institutional muddy waters. I mean, you aren't just signing a piece of paper or acquiring an asset. You're negotiating with the hopes, the anxieties, the historical traumas, and, like, the collective memory of millions of people. A contract in this space is a statement of intent about the club's very identity.
Yeah, and that brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We are unpacking the massive new contract extension for Manchester United midfielder Kobbie Mainoo.
Such a huge deal.
It really is. He has officially signed a deal keeping him at the club until June 2031. And, we've got a fascinating stack of sources on the table today to help you understand the sheer magnitude of this moment. We're looking at the primary official reporting from BBC Sport, but to really understand the mechanics of how this deal impacts the culture of the club, we are also diving deep into the extensive, vibrant, and sometimes just utterly chaotic threads from Reddit community.
Oh, the Reddit threads are wild.
They really are.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at Red Devils, Rye Manchester United, and soccer.
Because you really have to look beyond the BBC press release to grasp the stakes here. Like, this isn't just standard administrative paperwork.
Right, it's not just a routine reward.
Exactly. Or, a pat on the back for a promising youngster. This is the dramatic final act of a roller coaster saga.
Yeah.
We're talking about months of intense transfer rumors, high-profile manager clashes, and sheer internet panic.
The panic was real.
It was, all culminating in what feels like a critical cornerstone being laid for the club's entire future.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by ripping into the anatomy of the deal itself, because the numbers floating around in our sources, they tell a very specific story about how modern football values homegrown talent.
They really do.
The paperwork was completed at the Carrington Training Center on a Wednesday, wrapping up a negotiation that, well, sources indicate had been ongoing since January.
Right, so it took a while.
It did. Mainoo, who just turned 21 this month, signed a new 5-year extension that supersedes his previous deal, which was set to expire in the summer of 2027.
Okay, so a massive extension.
Massive. Now, the financial details reported in the sources suggest his new salary is somewhere in the region of £135,000 to £150,000 per week.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have to play devil's advocate here because paying a 21-year-old £150,000 a week is exactly the kind of financial structural bloat that has trapped this specific club in the past.
Oh, completely.
Like, we've seen players secure these astronomical figures early and completely lose their competitive hunger. So why is the narrative around this specific number so positive?
Well, the reception to that figure fundamentally shifts when you analyze his baseline output against the broader market reality, right?
Okay, how so?
If you evaluate him purely as a 21-year-old, the number seems steep. But look at the empirical data he brings to the negotiating table. He already has 98 senior appearances for Manchester United.
That's a ton for his age.
It's massive. He has scored 7 goals from midfield, including the decisive match-winning goal in the 2024 FA Cup final against their biggest rivals.
Unbelievable moment, yeah.
And furthermore, he was an integral part of the England squad, starting in the Euro 2024 final.
So the club isn't paying $150,000 a week for potential,
Right.
They're paying for a proven, battle-tested entity who performs on the biggest stages in European football.
And that distinction between paying for potential versus paying for proven output, that is critical. And it reflects heavily in the digital public square.
Oh, definitely.
Like on the Reddit threads we analyzed, fans are actively pushing back against the idea that this is an overpay. They're calling $135 to $150K a week A very good contract for both club and player.
Yeah, that was the consensus.
And one commentator explicitly contrasted this with the club's past business. They said, an academy player with a well-deserved raise that also isn't some eye-watering $300K deal will never get out from under.
Good phrase.
Will never get out from under.
Oh.
Man, that carries so much historical baggage.
It reveals a highly educated fan base that has, unfortunately, been forced to become amateur accountants due to years of boardroom mismanagement. Right, they know the wage bill better than the executives.
Exactly. For a long time, the club's strategy involved handing out massive, inflated contracts to aging stars, or just reactive panic buys.
Yeah.
Those players would inevitably underperform, and their exorbitant wages made them virtually impossible to sell, trapping the club in this cycle of financial paralysis.
Which we've seen time and time again.
Exactly. So securing a player widely regarded as a generational talent at $150,000 represents a major victory for boardroom stability.
It feels like a paradigm shift.
It is. It's proactive investment that protects the club's asset value and actually leaves room for future wage bumps rather than reactive panic spending.
And beyond the economics, the emotional resonance of this deal is staggering. The quotes Mainoo provided upon signing, they read like a masterclass in anchoring yourself to a city's culture.
They really do. What did he say again?
He said, "Manchester United has always been my home. This special club means everything to my family." And then he added, "I have grown up seeing the impact that our club has on our city, and I relish the responsibility that comes with wearing this shirt."
The use of the word responsibility there is incredibly telling.
Why do you think so?
Because it's incredibly rare to hear a 21-year-old actively embrace the psychological weight of playing for a globally scrutinized brand.
That's true. Usually it's all about I'm so excited or it's a dream come true.
Right. They talk about a dream or their excitement to play with certain teammates. Mainoo framing it as a responsibility to the city indicates a level of maturity and situational awareness that likely factored heavily into the club's willingness to commit to him until 2031.
Yeah, and he also literally maps out his geographical journey in the interview. He talks about his very first training session at the age of 6, and he traces his path from the Cliff to Littleton Road to Carrington and ultimately to Old Trafford.
It's quite the list.
It is. And for you listening, if you aren't deeply entrenched in Manchester's local geography, those aren't just random training facilities.
Yeah.
Those are the sacred foundational stepping stones of the Manchester United Academy system.
The Holy Grail.
Exactly. It's the exact same geographical pilgrimage taken by the legendary class of '92.
And by explicitly naming those specific locations, he isn't just recounting his childhood.
What's he doing?
He's deliberately weaving himself into the mythology of the club. I mean, we have to consider the current era of this specific club. They are undergoing a massive structural transition.
Huge changes at the top.
Right. There are new boardroom structures, changing managerial philosophies, and a shifting cultural identity. During periods of intense corporate turbulence, a fan base desperately needs an anchor.
Someone to hold on to.
Yes. They value Mainoo's local, Stockport roots immensely because he represents a pure, uncorrupted symbol of what the club is supposed to be at its core.
It's think about it like finding a priceless artifact buried in your own backyard.
That's a great way to put it.
You didn't have to go to an auction house and outbid your wealthy neighbors for some exorbitant fee. You nurtured it from your own soil.
Exactly.
And when you uncover something like that, you protect it at all costs. You absolutely do not put it on the market.
But putting it on the market is exactly what almost happened.
Which is just insane to think about now.
It is. The irony of this celebratory 2031 contract is that it masks a near catastrophe. If we rewind the sources just a few months, this fairy tale narrative was unraveling at an alarming speed.
Yeah, this is where the timeline gets incredibly tense, because while everyone is celebrating now, the reporting from roughly 4 to 8 months prior paints a shockingly grim picture.
Very grim.
Let's look at the roller coaster that was the Ruben Amorim era. Under Amorim, Mainoo wasn't just experiencing a sophomore slump. He was actively described by insiders and journalists as an outcast.
Which is just a stunning label for a player of his caliber. And the speed at which his situation deteriorated is a stark reminder of how fragile a young player's career trajectory can be under the wrong managerial system.
It changed so fast.
Journalists covering the club, like Chris Wheeler and Laurie Whitwell, were reporting that Mainoo was open to a January loan, or perhaps even a permanent exit.
Wow.
The sources use the phrase breaking point to describe his relationship with the club hierarchy. Insiders suggested he saw absolutely no future for himself at Old Trafford, as long as Amorim was the one dictating the tactics.
And the resulting transfer circus was staggering. Our sources track the sheer volume of rumors, noting that 12 different clubs were actively trying to sign him in January.
12. That's half of Europe's elite.
Right. And Napoli was reportedly at the absolute front of the queue. They were willing to cover his entire wage packet for a loan deal. And the reporting noted there was genuine disbelief. Disbelief in all caps in the sources within the Napoli boardroom that United were even entertaining the idea of letting him go.
And you have to understand, when a club like Napoli, which operates on incredibly tight margins and relies on spotting market inefficiencies, expresses disbelief during a negotiation, it implies something very specific.
Which is?
It implies they think the selling club is making a fundamentally irrational, self-destructive decision. They saw a wildly undervalued asset being mismanaged, and they tried to exploit the chaos.
They smell blood in the water.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just Napoli. West Ham reportedly offered him a guaranteed starting spot, which, is a massive lure for a young player desperate for minutes.
Absolutely.
Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid were circling, just monitoring the friction. And then you had the Chelsea rumors.
Oh, the Chelsea rumors were terrifying for the fan base?
Yeah. Earlier in his career, Chelsea had inquired and were quoted a £70 million asking price. But during the absolute nadir of this Amorim era, rumors suggested United might accept a drastically reduced fee of $45 million, or even less, just to permanently move him on and eliminate the dressing room friction.
Which is just, from an asset management perspective, selling a 20-year-old full England international, a player who just signed a deal validating his $150K a week worth for under $45 million would have been a catastrophic miscalculation.
A fire sale.
Yeah. It highlights how interpersonal conflicts between a manager and a player can artificially depress a club's financial assets.
But I want to push back on the idea that this was entirely the manager's fault, or at least explore the psychology of the fan base during this dark period.
Okay, let's get into it.
Because how does a player go from being the hero of the FA Cup final to being labeled an outcast with a toxic attitude, which is exactly how some vocal internet commenters were describing him in a matter of months? Was there genuine regression in his game? Or was the fan base simply adopting the manager's framing of the situation?
Well, the discourse on the SR Manchester United and Stir Devil subreddits from that period provides a fascinating psychological case study of sports fandom.
It really is wild to read back on.
The fan base was deeply fractured. One highly upvoted post reflecting on that era noted, apparently Kobbie Mainoo was a bang average footballer with a toxic attitude, and we should have sold him, according to many on this sub, just a few months ago.
Bang average.
Right. It shows how quickly a crowd can turn when systemic failures are disguised as individual shortcomings.
Bang average is such an absurd label for a player who commanded the midfield in a European Championship final. It feels almost like collective gaslighting.
It happens frequently when a team is underperforming. The overarching tactical system is complex, it's difficult to critique, so fans and pundits often look for a simpler scapegoat.
That makes sense.
If the manager drops a star player, the assumption from a segment of the fan base is that the player must be lacking effort or displaying a poor attitude. However, this narrative was fiercely contested by others.
Most notably by former club captain Roy Keane.
Yes.
His defense of Mainoo was heavily circulated across the Star Soccer subreddit. Keane urged patience, stating, "He's 20 years old. What's wrong with being patient and learning his trade? Even if he doesn't get his chance, we've all had to go through that. You have to prove the coach wrong when you do."
Keane's perspective is steeped in traditional football stoicism,
Yeah, very old school.
The idea that you put your head down, you suffer in silence, and you force your way back into the team through sheer willpower.
But it's incredibly difficult to prove the coach wrong if the coach's tactical system fundamentally neuters your specific skill set.
Exactly.
And there was also this bizarre subplot regarding his fitness during the Amorim exile.
Oh, the injury reports.
Right. The club's PR machine would put out vague statements about Mainoo missing matchday squads due to a small injury. Meanwhile, Amorim would specifically cite a calf problem in press conferences.
He was very suspicious.
Given the reports of a complete breaking point in their relationship, you have to question the medical validity of those absences.
Oh, absolutely. The phantom injury is a classic diplomatic tool in professional football.
Really? Just completely made up?
Sometimes, yes. It allows a manager to remove a player from the squad without publicly airing the tactical or personal disagreements happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, I see.
It protects the player's transfer value, because a physical knock is less concerning to buyers than a toxic attitude, while allowing the manager to assert control.
That is fascinating.
Whether Mainoo actually had a lingering physical issue or if it was entirely fabricated, the calf problem perfectly aligned with a period of intense tactical exile.
Fortunately for the club, whatever that calf problem was, it seemed to miraculously heal the moment the managerial office changed hands.
Funny how it works.
Right. This disaster of losing a homegrown star was averted by a pivotal change in leadership, bringing us to the resurgence under Michael Carrick. And that tactical awakening we see in the sources here is just phenomenal.
The transformation is immediate and stark. The data shows that once Michael Carrick took over, Mainoo started 11 of the last 12 games.
Night and day.
The outcast instantly became the undisputed anchor of the midfield.
And you can hear the psychological relief in Mainoo's own words. During an interview with Sky Sports covering this exact run of games, he said, "I love every minute of it, even though it's not always been wins. It's amazing to be on the pitch, especially under the boss now, and I'm feeling the confidence from him."
That phrase, feeling the confidence, is the critical mechanism at play here.
Why is it so important for his position?
Well, for a central midfielder, your entire game is predicated on spatial awareness and split-second decision-making. When you operate in a system where you don't fully grasp the manager's complex instructions, or you feel that one misplaced pass will result in being dropped, you play with hesitation.
You overthink it.
You look over your shoulder constantly. Carrick didn't just hand Mainoo minutes, he provided tactical clarity. He simplified the demands, which allowed Mainoo's natural instincts to take over.
The fans on Reddit were meticulously tracking the on-pitch mechanics of this newfound confidence. Following matches against Brentford and Chelsea, the tactical observations in the comments were gluing.
What were they saying?
One fan noted, "It was very noticeable how much better his stamina was. He used to get gassed early before, but you could see the difference." Another pointed out his drastic improvement in defensive diligence, stating his positioning and defensive actions versus Brentford were excellent. They even acknowledged that his defensive work rate used to be a highly valid criticism of his game.
See, the observation about his stamina is a profound tactical insight.
Tell me more about that. Why stamina?
Think about it. Why does a player suddenly appear to have vastly improved stamina in the middle of a season? It is rarely a sudden increase in physical cardiovascular fitness.
Right. They're already professional athletes.
Exactly. It is almost entirely related to mental fatigue and positioning. When a player is forced into a rigid system that runs counter to their natural reading of the game, which was the implication under Amorim, they spend immense cognitive energy second-guessing their movements.
So they're burning energy thinking, not just running.
Precisely. They step out of position, they realize their mistake, and then they are forced to make desperate, high-intensity recovery sprints. That mental friction and those constant corrective sprints cause them to get gassed early.
That makes so much sense.
Under Carrick, Mainoo knew exactly where he needed to be. Efficient positioning conserves physical energy.
It makes me think of an analogy. Under Amorim, Mainoo looked like a high-end sports car being drained by someone who just refused to shift out of second gear.
That's a great image.
You know, the engine is redlining, it sounds chaotic, it's burning incredible amounts of fuel, but it's not actually going very fast. You assume the car is broken.
Right.
Then Carrick steps in. He doesn't just change the gear, he understands the exact torque and power band of the engine. He shifts it perfectly, and suddenly the car is gliding. It looks effortless, and it's covering twice the distance on half the fuel.
That visual perfectly encapsulates the transition. And the statistical data from our sources validates that exact feeling of effortless control.
Let's talk about those stats. The numbers from his performance against Spurs are just staggering.
Truly elite.
The fans were hyping up this specific game-by-numbers breakdown. 94% pass accuracy, 95 touches, 24 carries, 4 ball recoveries, 4 chances created, 2 successful take-ons, 2 fouls won, and an assist.
Let's break down why those specific metrics are so vital for a modern midfielder.
Please do.
Recording 95 touches with a 94% pass accuracy means you aren't just a passenger in the game. You are the metronome dictating the entire tempo.
You're running the show.
But the most revealing stat in there is the 24 carries.
24 carries. Why is that the standout?
In modern tactical setups, defensive blocks are incredibly compact. Passing around them often leads to sterile possession. You just pass sideways, right?
Yeah, boring possession football.
Exactly. A player who can receive the ball under pressure and successfully carry it forward, breaking the lines through dribbling rather than passing, completely shatters the opponent's defensive structure.
Wow, so he's physically pulling defenders out of position?
Yes. The fact that he combined those 24 carries with 4-ball recoveries shows a complete, holistic midfield performance. He was dismantling Spurs offensively while simultaneously plugging the gaps defensively.
Okay, so this brings us to a massive question. One incredible performance against Spurs, or even a great 12-game run, is fantastic. But a contract keeping him until June 2031 means the club is essentially betting their entire immediate future on him.
A huge bet.
Let's look at the bigger picture. How does securing Mainoo stabilize the core of the first team and influence the broader academy structure?
Well, to understand the institutional strategy behind this, we need to analyze the specific language used by Jason Wilcox, Manchester United's director of football, in the official press release.
What did he say?
Wilcox states that Mainoo is one of the most naturally gifted young footballers in the world. But he immediately pivots from praising raw talent to praising character, highlighting Mainoo's dedicated professionalism and humble personality.
Okay.
He concludes by calling him the perfect role model for our young players and a true credit to our outstanding academy system.
So Wilcox is deliberately using Mainoo as a billboard for the club's internal culture.
Yes.
He's telling the public, and more importantly, the academy kids, this is the prototype, this is what we value.
Exactly. And the fan base is entirely on board with this projection. They aren't just viewing him as a functional piece of the midfield. They are actively discussing him as a future captain.
Really? Already?
Oh, absolutely. One fan commented, "Hope he continues to improve his game and become a future captain for us. It's all about finding the right midfield partner for him now."
That last sentence is interesting. Finding the right partner.
That fan comment hits on the exact strategic shift this contract enables.
How so?
Think about it. When your most talented young midfielder is unsettled and pushing for a $45 million exit to Chelsea or Napoli, your entire recruitment department is paralyzed.
Because they don't know if they need to replace him or build around him.
Precisely. You are forced into a reactive stance, constantly scouting for emergency replacements. By locking Mainoo down until 2031, the club transitions from reactive panic to proactive team building.
They have a foundation.
They now have a fixed point on the tactical map. The scouting department's sole directive becomes finding specific player profiles that perfectly complement Mainoo's line-breaking carries and spatial awareness. It stabilizes the entire ecosystem.
And it aggressively repairs the catastrophic messaging that was bleeding out of the club during the Amorim exile.
Oh, the PR disaster of that era.
It was awful. During that dark period, you had incredibly influential figures sounding the alarm. Nicky Butt, a former Manchester United player and former head of the academy, went public with a devastating assessment.
I remember this.
But claimed, for his football career, he has to leave Man United. He's lost out on 18 months of development. But even explicitly stated he hoped Mainoo would move abroad because going to a direct domestic rival like Chelsea would be embarrassing for the club.
Consider the weight of that statement.
It's massive.
For the former head of the academy to publicly declare that the club's crown jewel must flee the environment to save his career is a massive, damning indictment of the institutional culture at that time. It sends a terrifying message to the parents of every prospect in the youth system.
Exactly. If the best player the academy has produced in years is being suffocated, why would any promising 12-year-old stay?
They wouldn't. They'd go to City or Arsenal.
Right. But this contract completely rewrites that narrative. It proves that the pathway from Littleton Road to the Old Trafford pitch is still viable.
It's a lifeline for the academy.
It tells the youth players that if you possess the mental resilience to survive the inevitable turbulence and managerial changes, the overarching structure of the club will eventually recognize your value and reward you.
It restores faith in the fundamental promise of the development pipeline. It serves as proof of concept that Manchester United can still cultivate and retain elite talent.
Which perfectly transitions us into how the digital public square processed this massive, whiplash-inducing shift from absolute despair to utter euphoria.
The internet reaction was something else.
The fan catharsis and the internet discourse surrounding this announcement are just a goldmine of human emotion. Let's dive into how the supporters are reacting.
The sheer relief across platforms like Red Devils and soccer is palpable.
I can imagine.
It is a potent cocktail of celebration, intense vindication, and a sort of collective exhaustion resulting from the emotional roller coaster of the last 6 months.
The nicknames alone tell you how highly he is regarded. One user dubbed him the Stockport Seedorf.
Wow. Seedorf.
I know, comparing a 21-year-old to Clarence Seedorf, one of the most complete, tactically intelligent, and physically dominant midfielders in the history of European football, is incredibly high praise.
That's massive expectations.
Another fan mentioned they're just waiting for him to recreate his famous FA Cup winning goal against Liverpool in their next fixture. But it's the highly dramatic, almost poetic reactions that really capture the mood.
They get very dramatic on Reddit.
They do. One user literally quoted song lyrics, writing, "Rain clouds, oh, they used to chase me."
Oh, wow.
Another user dramatically declared, "Until Kobbie, I was never happy."
While it sounds hyperbolic to an outsider, you have to understand the psychology of local supporters.
Explain that for us.
For a fan base rooted in a specific city, homegrown players are deeply entwined with their own identity and sense of civic pride. When a club relies on a collection of highly paid, underperforming mercenaries brought in from abroad—
Which United has done a lot of.
Exactly. When that happens, a local kid succeeding through the academy is often the only source of authentic, uncorrupted joy available to the fans.
That's a great point. I found one comment that genuinely made me laugh out loud because it so perfectly captures the modern internet experience.
I'm with it.
A user simply wrote, "Dead internet theory exemplified."
That is a fascinating application of digital culture to sports fandom.
It really is. The dead internet theory is the idea that the web is entirely populated by bots generating fake content for other bots, and that nothing genuine or positive actually exists online anymore.
Right, it's all AI.
By applying it here, the fan is essentially saying, this news of Mainoo signing until 2031 is so impossibly good, so perfectly aligned with exactly what this fan base desperately wanted, that it cannot possibly be real.
I must be hallucinating.
Exactly. I must be reading a fake AI-generated simulation because good things do not actually happen to this football club.
It perfectly illustrates the battered psyche of the modern Manchester United fan. They had been conditioned through years of disappointment to expect the absolute worst outcome.
They were ready for the worst.
They were bracing for the $45 million fire sale to Chelsea or the humiliating loan to Napoli. Consequently, retaining their best prospect feels surreal.
But even amidst the celebration, there's a lingering sense of PTSD in the comments section.
Naturally.
I saw one fan explicitly checking their optimism, writing, "Yes, let's hope this continues. I have bad memories, a fast winger who was about to sign a new agreement, and now he's on holiday in Spain."
The ghosts of contracts past haunting the current celebration.
Exactly. The sources even explicitly mentioned that Michael Carrick was respectful when discussing the futures of Tyrell Malacia and Jadon Sancho, noting that they are widely expected to leave the club as free agents.
Sancho fits that fast winger description perfectly.
He really does, and we have seen this movie before. A young player secures the massive bag, signs the long-term contract, and then their development stagnates or their effort drops.
Right, they get comfortable.
So why are the fans, for the most part, so confident that Mainoo won't become another expensive cautionary tale?
The confidence is rooted in the specific nature of his developmental journey.
Okay, unpack that.
Unlike a high-profile transfer who arrives with massive external hype and is immediately handed a massive wage purely based on reputation, Mainoo's growth happened through intense adversity.
He had to fight for it.
He was not handed this $150K a week deal as a speculative bet. He had to survive the psychological toll of being labeled an outcast. He had to endure a managerial regime that actively suppressed his skill set.
The Amorim days.
Right. He had to battle back from the brink of a forced transfer. He proved his mental resilience and his undeniable worth on the pitch under Carrick before the club handed him the financial reward.
He earned it in the mud. He didn't just inherit it because of his potential.
Precisely. And the fans who fiercely defended him during that dark period are taking their well-deserved victory laps right now.
They must be so smug.
Oh, completely. We see comments highlighting this exact sentiment of vindication. Big shout out to the many I argued with under Amorim, who tried convincing me he had regressed and needed to leave the club. Such an important player getting better by the week.
It's the ultimate "I told you so" moment for the loyalists.
It really is.
They view this deal as a major, definitive victory for stability. It is much more than a player signing a piece of paper. It's the club drawing a line in the sand about its identity, its commitment to youth, and its future direction under Michael Carrick.
It acts as the critical foundation stone for the club's long-term rebuild. You simply cannot build a stable structure without first pouring the foundation, and keeping Kobbie Mainoo until 2031 is exactly that.
So, to pull all of these threads together for you listening, we've tracked an incredible, multi-layered story today.
We really have.
We started with a 6-year-old local kid from Stockport taking his first touches in the academy system. We watched him rise to the pinnacle of scoring a match-winning goal in an FA Cup final, only to be plunged into the dark, murky days of transfer rumors, tactical exile under Ruben Amorim, and a deeply fractured fan base debating his fundamental worth.
Such a roller coaster.
And finally, we see him emerge on the other side, finding absolute tactical clarity and trust under Michael Carrick, culminating in a landmark contract that stabilizes Manchester United's future for the next half-decade.
It serves as a powerful testament to how rapidly a narrative can shift when undeniable talent is finally paired with the correct tactical and psychological environment.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the sources, we want to leave you with a lingering thought to mull over. We spent a lot of time today dissecting the intricate relationship between tactical systems and player confidence.
It's a crucial relationship. If a player's perceived value and entire career trajectory can swing this violently, from being dismissed as bang average and on the verge of a cut price $45 million exit,
Yeah.
to being universally hailed as a generational talent and a future club captain in just a matter of months, based almost entirely on the tactical trust of a new manager.
Right.
Well, it raises a profound question about the sport as a whole.
Exactly. If you're listening and thinking about this, how many other players out there, maybe even sitting on the bench at your own favorite club right now, aren't actually regressing or suffering from a toxic attitude?
They might just be misunderstood.
Right. How many are simply trapped in the wrong gear, waiting for the right mechanic? How many players are just one system change or one manager's trust away from being world class?
It certainly demands that we reconsider how quickly we write off young talent when the immediate statistics don't perfectly align with expectations.
It definitely makes you realize that in professional sports, the numbers on the spreadsheet are just the beginning of the conversation. The real story, the mechanisms that actually drive success or failure, well, they're always hiding in those muddy waters. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We loved unpacking the intricacies of this deal with you, and we'll catch you on the next one.